the city was never truly silent. Even at midnight, when the streets were half empty, there were still the faint echoes of engines, footsteps, hurried voices, and distant music leaking from some bar that refused to sleep. Minh lived in that noise every day. At first, he thought it was normal, even comforting. After all, everyone else was living the same way, rushing through crowded streets, working long hours, glued to phones, chasing deadlines. But slowly, Minh began to feel something strange. Though surrounded by sound, he could no longer hear anything that mattered. One morning, while riding the bus to work, Minh noticed he had stopped listening altogether. He wore headphones, scrolled through news feeds, and let words and music wash over him, yet none of it stayed. Everything was noise, loud, endless, meaningless. And inside, an emptiness grew. That night, lying in bed, Minh whispered to himself, "When was the last time I actually heard me?" A few days later, by accident or fate, Minh stumbled upon a small cafe hidden in an old alley. Its name was written in faded letters, The Pause. Unlike the flashy coffee chains around the city, this place was quiet, almost too quiet. Inside, there were only a few wooden tables, a shelf of old books, and the faint smell of tea leaves. No loud music, no buzzing conversations. Just the sound of a clock ticking, slow and patient. Minh ordered a cup of hot tea and sat by the window. At first, the silence made him restless. His hands twitched, wanting to grab his phone, check messages, refresh updates. But then, he didn't. He just sat there, sipping tea. Minutes stretched into an hour. And in that hour, Minh noticed something he had long forgotten, the sound of his own breathing. The steady rise and fall of his chest. The way his heartbeat calmed when he stopped running after noise. He left the pause that evening with a strange sense of peace. The city outside was still chaotic, but within him, a small space of stillness had opened. That night, Minh bought a plain notebook. Not fancy, not expensive, just blank pages waiting. At first, he didn't know what to write. But the silence he found in the pause returned, guiding his hand. He wrote about the noise of the city. He wrote about his tired mornings and restless nights. He wrote about the emptiness he carried but never spoke of. And the more he wrote, the lighter he felt. Words became his way of listening. On the page, he could finally hear himself, his doubts, his longings, his forgotten dreams. One line stood out. Silence is not empty. It is full of answers. Minh closed the notebook, holding it close to his chest. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he had found a thread leading back to himself. Days passed, and Minh kept returning to the pause. Each visit felt like a secret escape from the endless roar of the city. One evening, he caught his reflection in the cafe's dusty mirror. He stared for a long time. The face looking back at him seemed older than he remembered, tired eyes, hunched shoulders, lips pressed tight as if carrying unspoken words. Is this really me? Minh wondered. The mirror didn't lie. Beneath the tiredness, there was still something else, a flicker, a hidden spark that noise had buried for years. That night, Minh wrote in his notebook. The world tells me who I should be. But the mirror reminds me who I already am. One weekend, Minh decided not to meet friends, not to scroll social media, not to drown himself in distractions. Instead, he stayed in his small rented room, turned off his phone, and just sat. At first, the silence was heavy, almost unbearable. His thoughts screamed louder than the city, deadlines, regrets, fears, what-ifs. He felt like drowning in his own mind. But he kept sitting. Slowly, the thoughts quieted. Beneath them, something softer emerged, a voice he hadn't heard in years. It whispered, "You don't need to run all the time. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to simply be." Tears welled in Minh's eyes. Silence was not empty, it was full of truths he had long avoided. On another visit to the pause, Minh noticed a man in his 40s scribbling in a worn-out notebook. Out of curiosity, Minh asked, "Do you write every day?" The man smiled. "Yes. It's how I survive. Writing is my way of listening to myself. Without it, I'd be lost." They talked for hours. The man had once worked a high-paying job but left it all to follow a quieter life. "People think silence is weakness," he said, "but it's the only way I found strength." That night, Minh wrote, "Noise drowns me. Silence saves me. Maybe my own voice has been waiting in the quiet all along." One quiet afternoon, Minh once again found himself at the little cafe called The Pause. It was as calm as always, just a few wooden tables and the steady ticking of a clock. This time, Min noticed the same old man he had seen during his very first visit. The man had silver hair, a thin frame, and gentle but piercing eyes. An old, yellowed book lay open before him. When Min hesitated nearby, the old man looked up and smiled. "Is this your fourth or fifth time here?" he asked. "Probably the fifth," Min replied, a little surprised. "I thought so. Your eyes are different now. The first time you walked in, they were full of exhaustion. Now, they still look tired, but deeper, maybe because you've started to hear yourself." Min froze. How could this stranger know so well? The old man gestured for Min to sit down. They ordered tea. Then, in a slow, steady voice, the man said, "You know, the world out there is always noisy. People think they're hearing a lot, but in truth, they're not hearing anything at all. It's just noise, not sound." "So, what's real sound?" Min asked. "Your own breath. The beat of your heart. The whispers of old dreams. But sadly, most people have forgotten how to listen." Min stayed silent. The old man went on. "I was once like you, chasing after noise, thinking that chaos meant life. Only when I lost everything did I realize how precious silence was." "You lost everything?" Min asked gently. The man only smiled, not answering directly. He took a sip of tea, then added, "To live in the noise yet still hear yourself, that is freedom. Try it, and you'll understand." That evening, back in his small rented room, Min wrote in his notebook. "Silence is not running away. Silence is learning to hear myself more clearly." One rainy night, Min didn't go to the cafe. He sat alone in his dim little room, the yellow light casting soft shadows on the peeling wall. Outside, the rain drummed steadily on the tin roof. In that rhythm, Min's mind drifted back to his childhood. He remembered running barefoot across muddy fields, laughing as he flew kites in the late afternoon wind. He remembered his mother sewing clothes on the porch, his father tinkering with an old bicycle. Those were days of simple peace, filled with true sounds, the rustling of wind, the ring of laughter, the innocence of a young heart. Then came the memory of the first story he ever wrote. It was clumsy, childish, yet it filled him with a joy so pure. Back then, he believed he would write forever, telling stories of life that would touch people's hearts. But as he grew older, responsibilities and the world's noise buried that dream. Sitting in the rainy night, Min felt tears slip down his face. He whispered, "I've been away from myself for too long." He picked up his notebook and began writing. Words poured out about the fields, about childhood, about his forgotten dream. His tears smudged the ink, but his heart felt lighter. In that moment, Min realized, listening to yourself isn't only about the present. It's also about returning to the child you once were, the one who dreamed, who believed, who loved the world without fear. Outside, the rain kept falling. But inside, a small flame was rekindled, the flame of living true, the flame of himself. Weeks passed. Min kept visiting the pause, kept writing in his notebook, kept practicing silence in the middle of life's noise. Yet something still felt unfinished inside him, like a door not yet opened. One weekend, on impulse, he left the city and took a bus toward the mountains. He walked alone up a narrow trail, surrounded by forests whispering with the wind. The farther he climbed, the quieter the world became. Cars, voices, even his phone signal, everything fell away. At the summit, Min sat on a rock, looking out at the endless sea of green stretching beneath the sky. For the first time in years, there was no noise at all, only the beating of his own heart. And in that silence, something stirred. He remembered the old man's words, "To live in the noise yet still hear yourself, that is freedom." Up there, Min heard it, not just the sound of his body, but the voice of his soul. It was soft yet clear. You don't need to be what the world demands. You only need to be yourself. That is enough. Tears welled in his eyes, but this time they were not of sadness. They were of release. When Min came back to the city, nothing around him had changed, the traffic still roared, advertisements still flashed, people still rushed as if racing time. But inside, Min was different. Now, when he heard the noise, he no longer felt swallowed by it. Instead, he could pause, breathe, and listen within. His notebook grew thicker each day with words, stories, and reflections. Writing was no longer just a hobby, it had become his way of returning home to himself. One evening, Min visited the pause again. The old man was there, as if waiting. Min bowed slightly and said, "I think I finally understand." The old man smiled, eyes kind and knowing. "Then keep listening. The world will always be loud. But your heart will always know the truth. Min left the cafe with a calm smile. Outside, the city was as chaotic as ever, but to him, it was no longer overwhelming. Amid the horns, the chatter, the flashing lights, he carried an island of silence within. And in that silence, he could finally hear himself.